today's conversation is about the roadmap to leadership, what it means to be a leader, the characteristics of a leader, and some of the common challenges that faces leaders in today's ever-changing world. Hey, Kevin, as always, he has a depth and breadth of skills and experiences in leadership, and he's going to be breaking down some of the common struggles the leaders face and how to overcome them. Hello, Kevin.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm good.
Excellent, excellent. So
Great.
yeah, so basically, when I started coaching, I was really interested in leadership and leadership development, and I had taken some programs, and it really gave me, a very wide range of views on some of the challenges that organizations face in dealing with leadership or having leaders and
Mhm.
making sure that they're effective leaders and things like that. And there's a lot of little things that occur that aren't really considered when you're talking about having a leader come on board. And a lot of people fall into a leadership position, you know, only because one, they've been there for so long, they've been put into a leadership or management position, and they're not really prepared for that. Or two, they're just the staff changes occur so rapidly, especially in the tech environment, that people are just being placed into these positions but have no training or understanding of exactly what it means to be a leader. And I think it's very important that you do understand there are different stages and steps to being an effective leader.
Mhm. That's very interesting, Kevin, because organizations, particularly in the tech industry, can
Mm,
start small and boom very quickly. So you can be leading a
exactly.
team of five people that can easily turn to 500 overnight
Yes,
without necessarily getting the training and the support or even understanding of what leadership is to be able to
that's
do
true.
the job effectively. So why don't we go from the very beginning then, Kevin? What is leadership and what
Leadership,
makes a good leader?
what makes a good leader is, a couple of things, like the ability to take care of the people that you are in charge of, um, not stop them from growing. What you want to do as a good leader is help people grow and develop in the areas that you want them to grow and develop. So you're not, there's a big difference between leadership and management, but there's also a difference between like somebody who's a natural leader and somebody who can develop leadership skills, right? I think everybody has the ability to be a leader, but great leaders are just kind of a natural occurrence, right? There's people that just take on a leadership role, whether they have been designated to be a leader or not. And what happens in a lot of organizations is that, as I said, people just fall into those positions because of the massive growth that a company is going through, or they've been in a position for a long time and people feel like, in order to keep them, they have to put them into something else. But the key to being a good leader is having the ability to understand and communicate people. So you have to be able to allow people to be heard. You have to be a good listener. You have to understand the different nuances of personalities and how people work together. A lot of emotional intelligence is involved. Um, Really, really, really good listening skills and the ability to see potential in people that you have on your team.
Mm. Okay. So if leadership can be a trait that is natural, i.e., as you explained, the person is born with it, or it
Mhm.
can be learnt. If it isn't natural and the person has learnt leadership but hasn't been taught it, they've just been thrown in the deep end and finding their way. What is the first step to uh, implement good principles of leadership?
I think what I normally tell people that I work with that are just sort of finding themselves in a position like that, and they have maybe, five or six people that are working with them as part of their team. A lot of people feel that when they get a position like that, they have to jump in and just, basically kick ass and pee all over everything to mark their territory. And that's the worst thing that you can do. What you want to do when you start in a position, especially if you've not been in that position before, you want to make sure that you allow your team to get to know you.
Mm.
Number one, you have to lead by example, not force things on people. So you want to spend it sounds like a long time, but it's not really. About a month, just going through, staying the course, seeing what people do, seeing how people interact with each other, seeing what their skill sets are, and meeting with them and talking to them and saying, like, these are the things that I'm hoping to accomplish as part of this team, right? These are the things, these are the goals that we have that my mandate requires me to achieve. Why don't you tell me what you think about this and what your input is on that, on what you think you could do or how you can contribute to that, right? I think it's very important to find out what people are capable of doing before you start telling them what to do, because you're not necessarily aligning it with their skills and abilities, right? You have to make sure that you're using people in the best way possible and that everybody's working cohesively. So you can't just walk in and take over. You really have to learn about the people that you're working with. That's the first step for somebody that doesn't have, a natural ability to lead or have, training or development in the leadership field. I think you have to go in and get to know people. It's just like walking into a party and getting to know people. You talk to them, you pull them aside, talk to them on a personal level. You want to know about them. You want to know what their challenges are, things like that. I think it's very important.
I love your analogy of walking into a party and getting to know people. Have you ever been to a party and you're sober and everybody else is drunk?
Yes.
So I'm imagining a leader who is new to the position, but there's already been and has inherited a team of people who have a toxic culture. When I say toxic, whatever they're doing is producing unproductive outcome. What is the way for a good leader, a strong leader, to inherit a toxic situation and turn it around?
I think one of the best ways to do that is to introduce an open door policy where people have the ability to express themselves and talk about what they think should happen freely and openly, and be able to say that they're not happy with their boss's decision from the past or things like that. Speak openly and freely, contribute to a conversation without worrying about repercussions. And I think that's a vital key step in the beginning, because you don't know what the situation is. You don't know what's occurred. And I would say 80% of people in a leadership position have inherited their team. So there's always going to be some kind of dynamic that you're not aware of, that you're not familiar with. And what you want to do is take those people and let them understand that, well, you have an open door policy. I want you to come in here and, put your shit on the table and let's figure it out. And now that doesn't mean that everything's going to go all turn into flowers and roses and everything's going to be fine, because it won't necessarily do that. But it will allow you to understand who is actually capable and willing to work towards making some changes and following a different path, right? But you as a leader have to be very clear in your communication on what your expectations are, what you expect from people, and then see if these people can live up to that, right? And give them a chance to do so. And if they can't, you might have to make some changes. You might have to let some people go. You might have to bring different people in. Lots of things can happen, but you have to give the people that you've inherited the opportunity to embrace the changes that you want to implement, and then bring them along with you, right? Quite often, you do end up, like I said, losing one or two people, but most often people appreciate the fact that they have somebody that they can follow that's going to help them learn and grow by example. That's the key, learning and growing by example as your leader, right? And that's going to lift them up. So instead of being somebody that's going to just like, oh, everything's good and push them down, you just do what I say. I want you to be innovative. I want you to be a good person and bring them up. I'm going to be underneath you, holding you guys up, and you guys are going to be stars. That's what you want to accomplish, right?
I left the corporate world many years ago, as you know, and one of the reasons also was my thirst and hunger to learn and grow. I wasn't so concerned about my pay and salary increment. Of course, that's important. We're there for that. But my highest value is to be learning and growing. And if I felt that my leader or my line manager was intimidated by my speed of growth, because
Yeah.
some leaders are like that, wanted to suppress me. That was an itchy a sign for me to move on. Okay, Kevin, we talked about today's changing work environment. And as I said, the world is changing and it looks very different from when I was in the corporate world.
Right.
It's more open, it's more inclusive, it's more diversified. There's many different types of people. What are the biggest challenges facing leaders today in accommodating all these different needs in the different people that are in the workplace?
So yeah, there's like you just mentioned like a ton of things that happen. The other big thing is that not everybody's in the same place anymore, right? Which makes it very difficult because you could have a team and they could be in like 5 different countries and very seldom physically get together, right?
Mm.
So that's a whole different dynamic on how you make people feel inclusive and allow them to speak freely and get to you in a reasonable amount of time. Because when you're not in that, kind of common location of a building or whatever, where you can just walk across the hall and talk to people, then it becomes like something you have to make an appointment far more often than you would normally have to do, right? So you have to have a really good system where
Mm.
people have the ability to do that. And there's tons of programs and apps that are available to do that. Like if you have a team and you want to put your team on Slack, put your team on whatever WhatsApp or whatever, and have a group like that,
Asana. Mm.
right? So you do, like, you have to have um where you would normally have, hey, knock on the door, walk in, chat. WhatsApp will replace that in a sense that, I've got something I want to talk to you right now. I don't have time to make an appointment for it. This is an issue, blah, 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 right? That's what that's for. But you also want to develop the environment that allows people to make decisions. You don't want an environment where people have to come to you. The thing is, you don't want to create an environment where you have people coming to you to make before they make decisions. You want to empower your team to be able to make decisions in the areas that they have the expertise, right? That's what it's all about, allowing them to do what has to be done to get the job done. You don't want people getting the message that in order to make a decision, they have to come to you. That is not the message you want to give. You want everybody to be working independently and the flowing, and that whole thing is all about communication and your ability to ensure that the people you're working with know what your stance is. Again, clear communication, right? These are the expectations, these are the deadlines, these are the things we have to do, this is where we're falling short. All of these things have to be constantly flowing through the team so that everybody knows where everybody is at the same time. And then it should run smoothly. Of course, things go off the rail, but you have that policy where people can come to you and catch it before it turns into something uh catastrophe or something, right?
One of the greatest things that came out of COVID was our ability to acclimatize and get used to different ways, right? It was
Mm-hmm.
the big reset for all of us in how we got used
Yes.
to working and interacting with each other. So you bring up a very important point about proximity and remote working. But I was actually referring to, like, now, for example, there are many different types of gender. There are
Mm-hmm.
many different types of parenting styles that affect the team because they have
Yeah.
different needs and requirement. What is the way to, I guess, treating everybody equally, even though we're all very different?
Well, I think like that's just it. Treat everybody equally, even though we're all different. That's the key, right? It's like to me, like for me, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, where you're from, uh, what you're doing personally, who you're married to, if you identify as someone other than uh, you were born, whatever. Like it makes absolutely no difference. All I'm concerned about is what you're capable of doing, right? So you have to create an environment where that person that is different from everyone else, that identifies that, it looks like a man but identifies as a woman, whatever the case may be, you have to make sure that you create an environment where that person doesn't feel that they have to address that every time they come into a room or talk about it. It shouldn't be that kind of an environment, right? Everybody is inclusive and it doesn't matter. Like, I think that's one of the biggest things that people struggle with. But in many cases, the person who is actually in that situation feels that they have to constantly make people aware of what their situation is. And you don't. You want an environment where that everybody knows what that person is, or who that person is, and how that person responds to things. Fine, like him, he, her, they, them, all of that. Just understand it. Make sure that everybody knows what the situation is, and move forward, because that's the whole key. It doesn't matter. It's all about what you contribute to the organization and the work that you do. That really is the bottom line. And there's no difference between me becoming more successful than another person becoming more successful, no matter who they are. It doesn't matter. And that's what you have to make sure you get across, is that you're not holding somebody back, or you're not giving somebody the impression that they're not included because of what they are, or who they are, or what they enjoy doing. It's got nothing to do with that. This is work. Of course, you want to be able to allow people to talk about, if you go in, you don't go in and say, like, your numbers are shit, like they've been shit for 3 months, pull up your socks or get out. Like, you want to, your numbers have been really shit for the last 3 months. What's going on? Like, how can I help you? Are you going through something at home? Be open to that, right? Those are the things that you want to make sure your team is capable of doing. But also, nobody's different. Everybody is the same. When it comes to something like that, everybody's the same. It doesn't matter where you're from, what you look like, whatever you do. You're still, the goal is the goal, and the procedure is the procedure. And it's your job to make sure you're taking care of your team and making sure that they move forward and get up there.
Thank you for that. It's good to know that leadership is mostly around building good relationships with open rapport and having a strong emotional intelligence to be able to support people and
Absolutely.
be behind the person at the desk or wherever they're dialing in from. I'm just looking, what are the different levels of leadership, Kevin? And do you have a particular leadership style yourself?
I think everybody does. I think that most people will tell you there's 5 levels of leadership, and those are, like, the position, the one that you get when you first become a leader, is where somebody gives you the job, where you're not technically a leader, and people don't really look at you as being a leader because you haven't done anything to prove that you're a leader, and you're not contributing anything to their lives to enhance their lives. But it's a stepping stone, right? There's a very good book. It's called Good to Great. It's by Jim Collins, and it's all about leadership. It's like the 5 levels of leadership, what it does. It really good examples of different companies that have experienced different types of leaders, things like that. So there's like 5 levels. There's like position, permission, production, people development, and the pinnacle of the top of the leadership. Right. The whole goal that people, I don't think, I fully understand when it comes to leadership, is that when you develop and grow and bring people along with you in your leadership journey, the idea is not like, when you go from level 1 to level 2, you don't forget about all the people that you had in level 1. Like, those are the people that you're developing and growing. You want to bring those people with you. You want those people to come with you, to help you, or help you by doing better in the position that they're in, and then magnifying that, showing that you have made progression, that you're growing and you're developing. The whole thing is about listening to people, developing their skills, taking care of the people that you're in charge of, not wearing them down, not burning them out, growing, developing, and being inclusive, right? So that's the biggest thing. What you want to do is encourage innovation, so that when you're at the top level of leadership, like you're the king of leaders, right? And you've got all these people working with you, a lot of people will say, that's it, I'm here. It's not. When you get to the top, you want to bring more people to the top with you, because the more you have people growing and developing as leaders, the more innovation you have, the more ideas you have, the better progression your company is just going to grow and develop and continue, right? So there's that. Then there's also the fact that, like, you don't want to be the type of leader that does all these miraculous things, and then you leave that company and the company crashes and burns. That's like, bad leadership, right? That's kind of like Chrysler leadership, right? So you want to make sure that if you're not there, that company is still doing the best that they can do. And they're just continuously, because you have worked so closely with developing leaders, those leaders have now taken over for you and continue doing the same thing that you did, so that you just keep going and going and going. That's why there's companies that have been around for hundreds of years, 30 years, right? And then there's companies that have been around for 5 years or 10 years. And there's a reason for that, right? Every company rises and falls because of their leadership structure. That's, you got shitty leaders, you're gonna have a shitty company. Boom, right? And it takes years and years and years to build it up, and it takes 2 seconds to crash and burn, right? So there's that.
That's a very important point that you made there, Kevin. The quality of the leader is not while they hold the position, but also what happens after they've left.
Mm-hmm.
What is your greatest legacy in your time as a leader that you left behind that's still continuing?
I think when I worked in a position as a policy advisor in the government, I had a team, and we developed, like, we made a lot of changes to a number of different legislations. And one of the biggest ones was the Municipal Act, which was 450 different municipalities across Ontario. And we made some substantial changes. And it was a long, hard fight. It took years and years and years to do. And there was like a ton of, backlash and things like that, not only from, local mayors and cities, and cities, big cities didn't want to do things for little cities, like those types of things, right? But I instilled in the people in the bureaucracy, and who I worked with, a format that allowed people to express their concerns, and then a format on how to manage those concerns and deal with them in every aspect of what they had to do. And I think that is something that didn't occur before in my particular ministry anyway. And I still hear from people. I was there like a number of years ago, and I still hear from people who are, when they retire, they're like, Kevin, I'm retiring. I know you haven't been here for like 10 years. Like, I just wanted to say thank you again, for what you did with us, because you were probably, one of very few people that took the time to develop a system with your bureaucracy that actually worked. And and I felt, I was very happy with that. I was quite proud of myself for doing that, because a lot of people, they don't do it.
That's great. That's really good that you implemented change, and that change is long
Yeah,
lasting.
still there.
It's
There you
still
go.
there.
Yeah.
So, what industry struggle most with leadership, and why?
I think the tech industry probably is on the top of the list for that. I think because of the type of industry it is, and because of the insurmountable growth that those companies face in short periods of time. So you have a company that starts up maybe with 5 people, and then in 2 years you got 6,000 people, and then you're popping people into positions all the time. I think there's a big gap where it comes to, putting the proper people into a leadership role. And if you put a person into a leadership role, you're not training them. It's just like crash and burn system. There's a lot of burnout that occurs in the tech industry. There's a lot of issues that occur in the tech industry. You got a lot of people, because of the setup of that particular type of industry, where people join the company, they buy into shares, right? The company is not a public company. They buy into shares. They get shares all the time on an ongoing basis. So they're worth eventually, hopefully, millions of dollars. But they become so stressed and so burnt out that the only goal that they have as an employee of that company is to make it to their tenure, so that they can leave and still have their share, right? So you're teaching them and growing and developing, so they're learning and ultimately going. And you really want people to learn and grow and stay with you, right? You can't keep everyone. And generally speaking, tech firms like to hire on an ongoing basis just to keep the innovation alive and keep ideas coming and everything like that. But there's always good people in that industry somewhere, and you want to keep those people if you can, right? So there's a lot of different dynamics that occur. Many, 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 many times you have a little startup company. So the CEO, who is the inventor of this company, does not want to let go of all those things that he's got his little fingers in, right? That creates a lot of problems. Then everybody that they hire is afraid to tell that person, no, this is not, this is doable, but it's not doable in the time frame that you have or that you've given us. And it just creates a ton of stress, which creates a ton of burnout, which creates a ton of turnover, right? So it's very cyclical, and it's just a big ongoing circle. That is the area that needs better understanding, that needs better training, better structure, and a lot more help. They are successful in spite of themselves because of what they do, because it's a needed service. It's, again, innovation and learning. It's always great, right? But that's the company that needs help the most, in my opinion. That's, again, just my opinion, but I think if I went on a search, I'd find a lot of people that felt the same way.
Mm. Well, that sounds great. And turnover in organizations in today's world is quite rapid, whatever industry that you're in.
Yeah.
Yes, you mentioned the tech companies, but in the UK here, across all sectors, banking,
Yeah.
even down to government, turnover is really high. Do you have a couple of strategies for retention that you can close with?
I think I would say, the biggest problem, the people that leave organizations don't generally leave the organization. They love the organization. They just don't like the people they're working for, because the people they're working for are not capable of dealing with people. That's generally a pretty normal situation, right? So obviously the key there is treating people properly with respect and understanding, being a good communicator, making sure that people aren't guessing all the time about what it is they're supposed to be doing. You can walk into any organization, you'll see like a handful of people walking around just like not even knowing what they're supposed to do, right, in that day. It's about structure. It's about structure, understanding. It's all the basic principles of living: good communication, respect, structure, understanding, and goal setting, right? So if you put all of those things in place for people, they understand, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. I can't do it because of this. I can use, like, the open door communication policy to do this, right? And then also take a day every week and just go to random employees that are in your environment and just say, you know what, I just wanted to say, like, I really love working with you. Like, I'm really pleased to be part of your team. Like, I'm glad you're on my team. I'm glad you're working with me. That goes a long way, right? Understanding that you have to recognize people for what they've done, and then look at things so relationships, respect, and accolades and praise and growth. Out of those four things, what's the most important thing that you want your people to do? There's only one correct answer for that, and it's growth. If your people are growing and learning constantly, all of those other things will fall into place. Growth is the key. You cannot stop somebody from learning and growing, and you want to encourage it because it's only going to benefit everybody involved, right? So that's it. For me, that's the key. Like that's what it's all about, is, again, respect, being able to grow and develop, and all of the other things will fall back into place.
Mhm. It's so interesting because everything you shared, as you said, are basic principles for leadership,
Mm-hmm.
and none of it is rocket science. But
Nope.
yet, as my father likes to say, common sense is not so common. So,
Exactly.
um, I guess people watching and listening, I hope you've taken something away. And just to treat people with respect, have good relationship, nice rapport, let everybody have clarity on what they're supposed to be doing. And most of all, like Kevin said, it's about growth. If they're not growing, they're dying. So make
Yep.
sure that you are growing and you're inspiring your team to grow equally. Thank you so much,
Exactly.
Kevin. This was great chat.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. If anybody wants to get a hold of me, I'm at kevin@kevinraymond.net, and my website is kevtalk.net. So if you have any questions or anything, just pop them in the email. Be happy to hear from you.
Great.
right?
Well, thanks everybody. See you next time.
Take care.
Bye.